So, who I am? I'm the member of the board. I'm a member of the board of the directors of the HPGB. That's the biggest organization supporting blind and visually persons in Austria. We have about 7,500 members and about 100 employees. So my perspective is the perspective of a DPO, of a disabled persons organization. And when you see where I'm member, then you can see where is the focus on my work. I'm a member of the Austrian and the European Disability Forum, of the EISPD, and several other organizations working on a European and international level. So for me, collaboration is one of the big things for inclusion of persons with disabilities. I'm a so-called CPAC from IAAP. IAAP is an American organization certifying persons in accessibility profession. CPAC means the certified professional on accessibility core competences. That means you are a manager in implementing accessibility in a company. And that's the second thing for me being important for inclusion, for digital inclusion, is certification and education. Then I'm a reviewer in certain conferences like the CSUN, the AAATE, the ICCHB, which are conferences on a university level. So research and education is the third focus point for me. And I'm a member of the standardization in several bodies. And it's the fourth point, which I want to stress out, which is important for me to reach inclusion, digital inclusions. We have to have standards that have to be followed by the law. And I'm ambassador of the Zero Project. Zero Project is one of the biggest initiatives worldwide, with about 5,000 members who are working on policies and practices for implementation of the United Nations Conventions of the Right of Persons with Disabilities. That means on independent living, on political participation, on education, on accessibility, and on employment for persons with disabilities. And we are collecting practices and policies to share it to the world, what is happening in another part of the world, to have a blueprint, or perhaps to scale it out or scale it down in another country, and to translate it in another country, for example. The Zero Project, by the way, is next week. It will be hybrid here in Vienna. We have about 400 persons attending the conference here in the United Nations organization, and about 1,500 which are online, and it's for free. You only have to go to zeroproject.org, and then you can follow the streams. And we have about 80 different panels, workshops, presentations, where you can see what's going on in the world of accessibility during the next week, from Wednesday to Friday. From my perspective, I have to say, why we are doing this, why we have to have inclusion. I know you are all experts, but for Austria, for example, we have the figures that we have about 1 out of 5 is touched by disability, and disability means you have multiple disability. Mehrfache Beeinträchtigung, that's the third column from the top. And we have mobility problems. With about 15% of the population of Austria is touched by mobility problems. But most of them are touched by the problems in a multiple way. Why? Because we are getting older. When we are getting older, we have problems with sight, we have problems with hearing, we have problems with mobility, we have problems with cognitive things, and so on. And we have it in a combined way. And there's one thing for sure, I always say it when I'm presenting, there's one thing for sure for all of us who are now in the panel, on the panel, or in the audience: you will be disabled. You will be disabled once in the future. When you are getting older, you will get a disability, mobility or sight loss or hearing loss or whatever. So you need accessibility. Accessibility is not only accessibility in the normal way as most of the people are expecting accessibility. We are talking about accessibility here in the framework of ICT, of information and communication technology, and there are no real figures here in Europe which can be shown up. So I tried to find something, and I found something in the United States of America, and they said about 80% of the population has without a disability has access to the internet, but only 60% has access to of persons with disabilities have access to the internet. And why they don't have access to the internet? Because of a lack of affordability, a lack of accessibility, a lack of design, and a lack of involvement of persons with disabilities in setting up solutions and websites for persons with disabilities, also for apps, for example. Yeah? The pandemic has shown us that it's possible. It is possible to include persons with disabilities into the work process, into the school process, into all the other things that are needed for a political and civil society life. But there is a lack of accessibility. On all the pandemic sites, for example, here in Austria, we noticed that screen reader users are excluded from the use, and they need to have another person to be able to register, for example, for vaccination, to register for other things that are needed during the pandemic. There is also no consideration of the largest minority in the world on COVID-related sites, because we have seen that also in other regions of the world, like in the States or like in the low-income countries. Yes. Now let's come to the politics and policy. In Austria, we have many regulations with many laws. We have many things that have been done since 2016. You can see it on the left-hand side when you have the slides. Then you can click on it, and you can see all the strategies, the ICT, the cybersecurity, the government strategy, etc., etc., etc. Yeah, but there is no mention, no explicit mention of persons with disabilities in all of these digital roadmap things, pieces that we have on the website of the Austrian government. There is a mention of, okay, not persons with disabilities, but minorities should be included, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but 15% are excluded. 15%, that means 15% of persons with disabilities are excluded from all of these digital roadmap items. So what we have we have a very good regulation. We have very good legal framework in Austria, and because as Croatia we are a member of the European Union. First of all the regulations from out of the European Union are also valid in Austria. That means we have the United Nations Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, but plus the optional protocol, which is where there's a commitment in Austria to follow this, with the Marrakesh Treaty, the recognition of sign language as a known language in the Constitution of Austria. Then we have the Website Accessibility Directive, which is called in Austria Webzugänglichkeitsgesetz, which replaces partially another law, the e-government law, but not replaces it. It's parallelly. That means the accessibility of the websites and mobile applications of the public sector bodies. And we have the second reporting period now, where we have about 256 websites and apps to be examined by a body here and to be reported to the European Union. Then we have the Electronic Communication Directive, which means that we have to have affordable, adequate broadband access in theory. because when you are out of the cities, the affordable, adequate broadband access is lacking. Then we have emergency services with the new regulation with the common European number 112, and the enforcement of text and video relay services for deaf and hard of hearing persons, for example. Another regulation is the Audiovisual Media Service Directive, where we have the mention of subtitles, live and audio subtitles, signing and audio description, which is an obligation for all the broadcasters that we have in Austria, and not only in Austria. One of the most important things that I think is the public procurement of ICT and products and services, the harmonized EN 301-549, which brings in accessibility in public procurement, because I think public procurement is one of the key things to make public services and to make the state accessible. We are moving several billions of euros every year by the state, and if all the things are accessible that are bought by the state, then we have a big angle to make all the things that are in the back or in the forefront accessible. The accessible requirements for products and services, and also for ICT in education, are also commitments that are made by the European Union, and the European upcoming Accessibility Act, which has to be transposed into national law till the 28th of June this year, which will be which came into power will be into power in 2025. In federal laws in Austria are the so-called federal constitutional law, das Bundesverfassungsgesetz in the Article 7, where non-discrimination is mentioned. The Federal Disability Equality Act, das Bundesbehindertengleichstellungsgesetz, and the Disability Employment Act. Both of these acts are placed on a private level, and not are not let me explain it in another way. If I'm a person with a disability and I feel that I'm discriminated, I have to sue, and there's no action from the state by itself, because there is no I'm not a lawyer, but I have to prove that I'm focusing, or not focusing. I'm seeing some hurdles for me, because I'm a person with a disability, and I have to prove that there is no accessibility. In the new upcoming European Accessibility Act, there will be the reverse thing. Yeah? The company has to prove that accessibility is built into the services and the products, and not I have to prove that there's no accessibility in the services and in the products. And that's, in my opinion, is a very, very big difference. Then we have the next one, it's the Web Accessibility Act, das Webzugänglichkeitsgesetz, as I mentioned before, where we have the first reporting period to the Commission of the European Union, and the E-Government Act, which is also into force in Austria. So this is the regulatory framework, and for me, very important is to mention collaboration is one of the main points to bring inclusion and to bring accessibility into the mainstream of the countries. And therefore, I mentioned some organizations which I would like you and your partner organizations join and to see how we can collaborate together, for example, in the European Disability Forum or with the Zero Project, or to join some of the conferences like the ICCHB, the CSUN, or the Zero Project Conference, also the ATAA in the United States of America, where we have assistive technologies on another level, because the American Disability Act is in force now since 30 years, and we have the European Accessibility Act now upcoming. I hope we will be there where the United States are now with some things like subtitling and sign language interpretation in Europe in 10 years where the United States are now. So that's very short. I keep it short and simple. I always say normally I kiss you, keep it short and simple. And if there are any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. I will send, or I already sent the presentation with all the links, and there you can find also my contact points. Thank you.